Bob Strang advises schools on security. He's a former co-chair of the New York Anti-Terrorism Task Force. And also with us, Philip Holloway. He's a former assistant district attorney, police officer. You are here. We saw this morning the tremendous police. We were able to see it because of the helicopter view, the police coordination to try to go to this home, apparently where the shooter was living. The police responding so quickly this morning.
Well, and you saw them, getting a warrant because they need to protect the integrity of this investigation. If the shooter is in fact still alive, you can of course expect criminal proceedings, but it may not be just with the shooter. There may be other people that could potentially be involved. One big question is, how did this shooter obtain this weapon? He may have obtained it illegally, and if so, did someone else assist in that? They need to be careful. They want to dot their I's, Dana, and cross their T's, because if this winds up in a court of law, they want to make sure that all of the evidence was seized lawfully and it's therefore admissible, because this is a big deal. They want to make sure that they get it right.
Earlier, Trace was reporting that the undersheriff there has said that there might have been social media posts with threats to this particular school. And we've heard these kinds of things before, and maybe it's impossible to try to track every single social media post. How important is that in this investigation? It's
going to be key, and I think I heard some discussion about this in previous segments on Fox News Channel today. That is going to be key. We want to see what, if any, was any relationship between any victims, anyone who was shot, and the shooter. We want to see if there was any animosity that has been displayed or expressed between the shooter and any of those victims or the school in general. It's going to be a long process. There's going to be a lot of electronics that have to be gone through very carefully. Those things need individual search warrants. For every device they go through, they're going to need a warrant. So they're going to have to make sure that they go slowly and carefully. Like I said, it's about protecting the integrity of this investigation at this point.
But in the meantime, Robert Strang, he's still with us. He's a school security advisor and a former co-chair of the New York Anti-Terrorism Task Force. And we also have Philip Holloway, former district attorney. Philip, you said you were listening to that and you had some additional questions.
Right. That was an informative press conference, Dana, but there's a lot that we don't know, and I think this is going to be the subject of the investigation. Just some of the questions I've got was, has there been any prior dealings with law enforcement with this shooter? Have they encountered him in a criminal context or otherwise? What kind of .45 caliber weapon was it? How many rounds were in there? They said that it was empty, but how many did it hold? How serious are the shooter's wounds? How did he get the gun? This is going to be a big question that I've got. Did he borrow it from a friend? Did a friend give it to him? Did he steal it from an adult? We know he couldn't just go out and buy it at his age. Undoubtedly, that gun was obtained in some unlawful manner, so I would not at all be surprised to see some other individuals being prosecuted in connection with that down the road. And overall, though I think that was a good press conference, the investigation clearly has a lot left to answer.
What about for you, Bob, as you sat and listened? What stuck out to you, or anything that you think will be an unanswered question going forward?
Well, the thing that sticks out is from being a former agent, someone who has to make decisions on the street, exigent circumstances, being able to seize phones, being able to get into apartments, to seize other weapons, to be able to take a look and see whether anyone else is in danger immediately. Yes, we want to make sure that everything is done properly, that we can, as Phil said, be prepared for successful prosecution. But when you're in the field and you're dealing with these things in real time, there's a lot of pressure. And you want to make sure that you're on top of everything in terms of no one else getting injured. And I think that's exactly what we heard here today. You've got the FBI, you've got the county, you've got the local police department, everyone working together in concert, using the best resources from each individual agency. You heard the forensics on the electronics are going to the FBI. The families are dealing with the sheriff's office and the local people, and other federal agencies, including the ATF and Customs and other units that are right in that area. They're all helping out. Everybody's working together.
Well, and I feel like, Phil, it does seem like there is a playbook here, and the state and the city, state, and local governments and federal government, they all come together, but we just can't prevent them. from happening?
There is a playbook, and what they're going to do is they're going to go back and try to piece this whole thing together. They're going to look at the shooter's actions today, earlier in the day. They're going to look at what he did in the days prior to today, and they're going to try to refine that playbook. They're going to dissect this incident as best they can down to the smallest detail so that they can work together better in the future to prevent it. One of the speakers at the press conference said they're going to throw all of the resources that they've got at this, and they should. They need to do everything they can. They need to move mountains if necessary to figure out what exactly happened so that they can hopefully prevent it from happening again.
Well, one of the details, let me get your take on this. The shooter, apparently a 16-year-old Asian male. He has grave injuries. He's at the hospital, and today was his birthday.
So there's probably some significance to him waiting until today was his birthday. I'm suspecting that there's going to probably be some relationship that they're going to find out about between him and at least one or more of the victims. There was something that triggered him to do this today, and the birthday is going to be a significant piece of this, I suspect.
Bob, any final thoughts here?
My final thought is that you just need to, on the prevention side, as you say, is if you can get your health...
Bob, we've just found out, we have breaking news. There has been a second death, unfortunately. We don't know. We know that there were...
How awful.
They said that there were, let's see, there were, at the police conference they just had, there was the one young woman we know that died. She was 16 years old, and he said that there was... two other young women, one 14 years old, one 15 years old, and then two males, both 14 years old. They have just said that there is a second confirmed death. We don't know which one that is. And so now, of course, there's already a tragic day. It gets even much worse, Bob.
It gets much worse. And unfortunately, we've been here before, and, you know, I hope we're not here again. All I can say is, in my experience of putting in security audits for a living around the world, is that you have to look at your mental health professional, your police professionals, and your administration.
All right, Bob.
They have to work together.
Okay, stay with us here. Let's go back out to Trace Gallagher. He has new information for us. Trace.
I just want to point out, Dana, that the second fatality might be the shooter. Remember, during the press conference, the sheriff said that the shooter was actually seen on videotape. He walked into the quad 7:38 this morning, and he opened fire with a .45 caliber handgun. He shot 5 people, and then he turned the gun on himself, and he fired and shot himself in the head. The sheriff at that time said he was in grave condition. Remember, all morning long, we had heard that the suspect suffered a fatal gunshot wound to the head, and then the sheriff later knocked that down, saying, no, it was not a fatal gunshot wound, that he is still in the hospital. So we don't know that for a fact right now because nobody's confirmed it. I just want to put that in the mix, that in fact the 16-year-old who turned 16 years old today did have a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and even prior to the report of somebody else dying, he was in grave condition. We should also point out, when they talked about these threats, your guests are exactly right. There have been 2 previous threats to Saugus High School in recent weeks, and both of those had been fully vetted and checked out and did not have a nexus to this actual shooting. And the last part, Dana, we've covered a number of school shootings in the past 23, 24 years since Columbine. This is one of the first ones I can remember where a student actually walked in with a gun, a single gun with a limited amount of ammunition, which of course brings up the prospect, was he targeting somebody? What was the motive? And they're going to find that out. They're talking to the shooter's girlfriend as well as the girlfriend's mother right now, and interviewing a lot of other people in the process of trying to figure out why on his birthday he came into the quad and opened fire, and the whole thing was captured on videotape.
Trace, I'm also just hearing in my ear that we can confirm now that the second fatality is actually one of the victims. It is not the shooter.
Okay.
That person is still in the hospital, but with the grave injuries. Bob, can I just ask you one last question here before we turn it over to Brett Baer? Threats to schools that check out to not turn out to be anything, how common is that?
It's common. It's picked up on social media. You know, kids are trained to report things to the administration. The police often are involved in local crimes. They report things to the school. It's common. And today, you don't leave anything unchecked. If you hear something, if there's something on social media, if the police see something, if the teacher sees something, it's looked at, it's investigated very thoroughly.
Well, we appreciate you being here, Bob Strang, Phil Holloway.